Hello everyone. For those of you who've been keeping up with my recent videos, my unboxing videos in particular, you'll have seen I've been sent quite a large collection of kit and equipment from a chap called Jack McCabe. Now, Jack served with both the British Army in the Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, and then went on to serve with the Sultan of Oman's armed forces. And Jack has also very kindly, as well as sending me all this kit, agreed to have a chat with me over Skype, reminisce a bit about his time in the British Army and his time with the SOAF, and that's what we're going to hear now, is Jack's memories of his service. To those who obviously have seen the previous videos looking at the kit that's arrived, I think there's another one due to go up as well. Jack has very kindly sent me a lot of his kit, and I've tried to pick up a timeline from the emails you've sent, Jack, of your service, and I got back as far as 1963, but obviously you say there's the battle dress from 1962. Perhaps you could run through a timeline of your service with the British Army as a start to this, and sort of explain where you ended up in your service. I'd be interested to know.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, actually, I started off in 1959 as an army apprentice. I don't know if you've heard of those people before.
Yes.
The Army Apprentice School, and
yes,
for 3 years I was an army apprentice. And what you did there, that was just like basically a military boarding school, and they taught you the particular trade that you were suitable for.
Yes.
So that's I was there from 59 to 62, and then 1962 to 63 on the upgrading course. Once you finished the apprentice school, you were a third-class tradesman, and then you went to a training establishment to get the second-class trade, and then from beginning of 63, I went to Germany, and there I served at an infantry workshop. The REME technicians and the tradesmen are really quite different from the regular soldiers, because what they do is maintain and look after all the military equipment, as you know.
Yes.
So whereas the infantryman or the cavalryman is studying his skills at killing people, so to speak, with us it was just like a big workshop. And
yes,
that's what we were. We were tradesmen, soldiers first and tradesmen second, so they say, but really we were tradesmen. So for the REME people, it was just like a big workshop with everything. So every day was doing whatever your trade was, depending what you did, you know.
And your speciality was radio.
I in the apprentice college or apprentice school, my trade was a telecommunications mechanic.
Right.
Which was looked after all the radio equipment in the army, and then we became telecommunication technicians, and that was my job in life. So anyway, so then I went to Germany at 3 infantry workshops. That was in Dortmund. From there, I went back in 1966 to our School of Electronic Engineering on an upgrading course. And then 77, I went. I was attached to the Queen's Royal Irish Hussars in Wolfenbüttel in Germany.
Yes.
Again, in that case, it was with their LAD, light aid detachment.
Right. Yes.
And all the regiments have those type of things, and we sort of hung on to the side and looked after their stuff.
Yes, indeed.
Then I went. The Queen's Royal Irish Hussars. They left Germany. They'd been in Germany for many, many years. And they came back to England to train up to run the armour school at Bovington.
Right. Yes. Okay.
That was and for 6 months we all came back with them. They did their training, and then as they moved to Bovington in 67 or 68, we were posted. All the LAD people were posted hither and thither, and then I went to 3 infantry workshops at that time.
Right.
That was a slightly different workshop because we were what they called an air portable workshop.
Right. Okay.
Which basically meant that we were with the strategic reserve at the time, and the whole workshop could be loaded up onto trucks and move anywhere in the world at a moment's notice. Where did I go from there? So, then after that, I got posted to the School of Signals, if you ever did.
Right.
which
Okay.
which is
Yes.
a REME radio technician. When I got the posting, School of Signals, I thought, oops, somebody's made a mistake somewhere. I can see me going there, and they're saying to me, oh, come on, kiddo, start repairing that Land Rover.
Yeah.
But actually, I went there before the posting just to see what was going on, and I found that I was going to look after all the test equipment.
Right. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
I was going to
which
say
which which is good, you know.
that makes more sense. Yes.
Exactly, that's right. And luckily, when I went there, there was not there's just myself and an old warrant officer there who had served in the war, chest full of medals, a real grumpy old git he was, like I am now.
Ah.
And it was quite funny because when the in the workshop we shared it with the signals people, and sort of when the guys brought me a coffee, it's there's your coffee, sir. There's your no.
Yeah.
He was a real old guy, real old time. He knew electronics inside out.
Yes. I was going to say, I imagine he had a pearl or two of wisdom to pass
Oh,
on.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And he was very good. When I went there, he said to me, he said, I suppose you want to go to college like the other guy did, do you? I said, oh, did he go to college? He said, yes, he did. He said, got day released at idle bugger, you know.
Excellent.
So I said to him, okay, yeah, I'll go when like I'm posted here in 3 weeks' time, as you know. I'll go to Bournemouth College and check them out there. And he said, no, they're enrolling today, so go now.
Right.
And, I mean, this is the type of guy he was, you know. He was very good. So anyway, I went to Bournemouth College and enrolled in a ONC and an HNC course. So for the next 4 years, while I was at the School of Signals, 1 day a week was at college, which is great.
Yeah.
Army paid for everything. Anyway, I left the School of Signals in 1974 to go to Arborfield. That's our School of Electronic Engineering.
Right. Okay.
And that was to go on an Artificer telecommunications course.
Right.
That's a 22-month long course, and it's everything, all the equipment's everything you need to know. After that, as a punishment, I think, because I didn't do too well on the course, I stayed on the permanent staff there.
Ah.
It's quite strange in the army. You would think that they would keep the top guys as instructors.
Yes.
But it seemed to be they kept the guys from the bottom third.
Yeah.
But that's the way it goes, you know.
The logic of the British Army is not always the strongest, you know. But anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. So I stayed there until 1979. I did a spell with in Cyprus, with the UN in Cyprus. Remember the Berry, the UN Berry?
Yes, the UN Berry. Yes.
That's where that came from. Just a 6-month tour with the UNICEF workshops there. They had a REME workshop attached, looking after their equipment. And then we went off to Canada, to BATUS.
Yes.
In 79 and stayed there till 81.
And just for those who may not know, BATUS is British Army Training Unit Suffield, which is the big training establishment in Canada.
That's right. It's in Alberta, on the prairie, and there's 1,000 square mile of prairie with nothing there. And what happens is that battle groups come from Britain or from Germany or wherever, and they come there for a month. All the equipment is supplied there. They just bring the bodies. So you've got everything there: tanks, armored cars, the whole shebang. And then they have a battle group and a battle. And the beauty about it is because it's so big, they can actually run a battle for 30 miles.
Yes.
Advancing under fire and all this sort of stuff, which you can't do anywhere else in the world at that time.
And certainly not in the UK. We're a bit restricted on space over here. Yes.
Well, that's right. Like at Salisbury Plain, you could only go about 4 miles, and there was a road, and the civilians would be that tight if a tank ran across the road.
Well, I was going to say, please, go on. Sorry, no, I'll come back to another point later, but yes, go on, please. Sorry.
Okay. So that took me up to 81.
Yes.
And then in 81, we came back to Scotland to 26 command workshops in Scotland, and I spent my last 2 years in the service on the REME inspection team. What we had was a team of various tradesmen, vehicles, tells, instrument, and we would go around to all the army units in Scotland, the army cadet units, officer training course. A great job. I mean, it was a really cracking job, Monday to Friday, and like Monday you may be in Edinburgh, Tuesday in Glasgow, Wednesday Arbroath. It was, I saw all of Scotland, and it was great.
Yes, excellent. And then obviously, as you say, after your British Army service, I can't remember the company you worked for a time, but then you saw an advert for obviously the Sultan of Oman's armed forces. Yeah.
Right. In fact, even when I left the army, I worked for Marconi Space and Defence, and I was working there on the 353, the Clansman 353 radio. You seen a vehicle-mounted radio. I was involved with the last batch of about 1,000 of those.
Right.
And then, as you say, we went. I saw the advert for Oman, and it was a bit strange because they were looking for workshop vehicle mechanics, for their armored workshop. And I thought to myself, well, if they have vehicle mechanics, they surely need telecommunications people. But no, they didn't.
Right.
Because the telecommunications looked after by the signals in Oman rather than in the REME. Yeah. But anyway, after to-ing and fro-ing in letters and telephone calls, they decided they would take me anyway. So
right, and and the rest is history, as they say. You ended up out there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, and obviously I've been the beneficiary of the kit and stuff you were issued at the time, which is very kind of you. So thank you very much for that.
As I say, the when I first went there, we had the olive green stuff that the British Army had, and for the life of me, I don't know what happened to it. I certainly remember wearing it, of there's photos of me wearing it.
Yes.
But where it went to, goodness only knows.
Yes. That I think there's probably quite a few people who were in at the time who, their kit that they did bring back with them is lost to the mists of time, But so that's the timeline, which is excellent to have at the start. One thing I always ask is, what was your sort of favourite time in the British Army? What was your favourite period? Where did you enjoy being the most, I guess?
I think most people who've been to BATUS will tell you the time in BATUS was the best.
Yes.
The permanent staff people thoroughly enjoyed it. And even the people on the battle groups who came, although they worked hard for 4 or 6 weeks on the battle, they had their 4 days R&R at the end, and they lived that to the full.
Yeah, I'm sure, yes.
I mean, when I was there, you used to get these guys, they'd hire a car, medicine hats in Alberta, and drive down to Las Vegas, which was about 1,700 miles away, and they only had 4 days R&R, so 4 of them would hire the car and would drive it in turn.
Yes.
It'd be in Las Vegas maybe 2 days and drive back again.
Yes, I was going to say just constantly driving. Yeah.
That's
right. Well, if you can, if you're young and fit enough to do it, and
that's right. I mean, we were the same. We had a tatty old tent trailer, and the first year we drove into Ohio, into America. We drove along the Trans-Canadian Highway from Alberta right the way to into Toronto and crossed the Niagara Falls into America. And suddenly there, the first night I had an uncle who lived there. When we visited my uncle, I suddenly realized once we got here, you're 2,000 miles from home, you know that.
Yes. Oh dear. But no, interesting to hear that was your sort of favorite bit of the whole shebang.
And if you look on the REME type websites, people mention BATUS time and time again. It was really the place that they enjoyed most of all.
Yeah.
But after that, just as a side, after I left Oman, I went to Saudi Arabia.
Oh right, okay, I didn't realise. Yes.
Yeah, and I was involved with the Crown Prince Special Battalion.
Right.
After their communication equipment, I was with those for 3 years.
Hmm.
And then I ended up with the Saudi Air Force as a comms engineer on one of their air bases.
Well, interesting. Not obviously didn't get to the Middle East in your British Army service, but then
No,
quite well travelled after.
after,
So yes,
yeah.
very interesting. I say I didn't realise you'd gone from Oman to Saudi, so that's interesting as well. What was your experience like out there? Do you,
Different.
different, yes,
In Oman, the local guys were great. I never met anybody I didn't like there, and it was a nice place to be. It really
yes,
was. We go there, and my wife came out on holiday, and we just traveled anywhere we liked, and there was nowhere at all. In Saudi Arabia, it's but much more restrictive, as you can imagine.
yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. And in your service, going back to British Army service, you'll have seen quite the change in technology, of course, as well in the time you were in. I mean, was it Larkspur when you first started
Yeah,
the video equipment?
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
Larkspur.
when I was in the apprentice school, it
Yes.
was the pre-Larkspur stuff. It was the 62 set
Oh, of
and the
course.
80 set, the
Yes.
real old set. That was just going out. And then I had Larkspur equipment most of the time. And Klansman came in with me in the late 80s.
Yes.
1980 came to BATUS.
Yes.
Although I had instructed on some of the Klansman equipment at Arborfield in 79.
Right.
But really, most of my time was Larkspur. And I was only thinking about it after you mentioned having this conversation. For me, it was the golden time for communications.
Mm.
It was the fact that with Larkspur, it had old valve technology, which meant they kept breaking.
Right.
Gave me as a technician things to do.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Yeah. And you get great satisfaction from a set coming in with a Land Rover pulling up and the guy jumping out saying my radio's not working, can you fix it yet? Mending it, give it back to him, off you go, and it gives you satisfaction that you don't get very often.
Immediate job satisfaction, yeah, absolutely. And obviously as systems became more reliable, that sort of falls somewhat by the wayside.
Larkspur equipment was in modular form, so you could replace modules, but you could also repair the modules.
Right.
Once you started onto the Klansman stuff, it was replace the module, and that's all you could do.
Right, I see. So there's not the
you don't get the satisfaction
no,
that you got
of
from
actually repairing the component.
Yeah.
Yes.
And also, say, of course, with Larkspur it was valves, so you're always pulling old valves out that broke and putting new ones in.
Absolutely. Oh, very interesting. And yeah, it's interesting to hear you were still looking. I couldn't bring to mind when Larkspur first came in, but of course it would make sense to say in the apprentice school that you'd be looking at the old stuff anyway at that time, and then moving on. The reason I knew of the apprentice school was my grandfather was Royal Army Education Corps, so early to mid 50s he was there. He was a schoolie at the apprentice school.
That's right.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's right, because we had the sergeant, education corps sergeants, all tend to be university graduates during their national service.
Yes,
now, yes. I'm not sure they were sent there as a punishment or what.
No, he signed on as a regular, and he hadn't been to university, but his education was good enough that he got in as a sergeant, and then went off, and he was early by your time he was in Germany, and then he left just after you joined essentially, so that's the very small crossover there. But yes, no, that's just to say how I knew of the apprentice school. But I'd be interested to know, so when you were in Germany, I take it you were, when you weren't the air transportable workshop, were you fairly static then when exercises and things were going on, or were you?
Yes, yeah. The workshop in Germany was 5 Infantry workshop based in Dortmund, and we tended to be based in the workshop most of the year. Although saying that, for 3 months of the year we would go to the north of Germany to Sultan, and there they had artillery ranges and stuff like that. So basically half the workshop would drive to Sultan and would set a satellite workshop up there.
Right.
Do the maintenance for the artillery, for about 12 weeks, I guess, normally. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And what was, in contrast, when you were working with the air transportable workshop, was there more sort of, I mean, obviously it was all mobile, but were you, how often did you sort of exercise and so forth in terms of that mobility?
I guess in the air portable workshop, they had a competition every year between all air portable workshops where we would go out on an exercise and they would compete against each other.
Yes.
And of course, we went to Ireland in '69. We were the second workshop to go there when the trouble started. But it was a different lifestyle. In Germany, in the early '60s, national service was just coming to an end.
Yes.
And they didn't really know what to do with us, to be quite truthful. We had a spell from about '63 to '66 where we just went along and did our work, and they had the occasional crash out that they had in Germany when the whole workshop and all the units would leave their barracks and go to set places in woods and stuff like that, which they would go to if the Russians attacked.
Yes.
But really, from say '63 to '66, it was just nobody knew what was going on.
No. Well, I suppose
it was a nice life. It was a great life.
Yes. Yeah. But you had the support apparatus in place for a big national service army, and then the army actually did shrink quite considerably at that time.
That's right. And in Germany, I mean, well, not only in Germany, but also in the infantry workshops, the air portable, we would visit our units that we supported on a regular basis. First, at least once a year to carry out a complete equipment inspection, but normally twice a year when we would go in between time, check all their equipment and repair it and maintain it and do whatever needed to be done for it,
Yes.
To keep all their equipment up to scratch, rather than wait for the user to say, oh, my shed's broken.
Yes.
We would go there and check it all,
Check it over. Yeah. That diagnostic makes perfect sense. Preventive maintenance on a preventive maintenance basis makes a lot of sense. Yeah. That's something that's lacking in some instances now. They wait for things to break before they fix them.
Well, that's right. I mean, the classic case, we were at the Green Jackets in Tidworth in the August of '69, and what we used to do, my team, the two guys and myself who worked together, we would check all their equipment the first week, and anything that was broken just chucked to one side.
Yes.
So we'll repair that next week, don't worry. And what happened on the Saturday, I came back from the shops and they said somebody called onto the house and said, these guys are going to Ireland on Tuesday and they need all their radios.
Oh dear.
So the other two guys and myself went into the Green Jackets in Tidworth and proceeded to work Saturday afternoon all day Sunday.
Yes, to get these working again. Yeah.
Which was good.
It was a bit of a rush job. I think that a lot of deployments for Op Banner were a bit of a spur of the moment thing, shall we say, given the situation on the ground. So, yes. And you ended up going over to Northern Ireland in 1969.
Yeah, our workshop we went into December. So we took over from the first group who went into August.
Mm-hmm. And providing the same, obviously the maintenance.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
For all the radio equipment and so forth. Interesting.
That's right. Yeah, we went to the main workshop stayed in Belfast, but the platoon I was in, we went to Ballykelly, RAF Ballykelly at the time.
Right. Yes.
And we stayed there, so we looked after the Londonderry area,
Yes.
So
interesting.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say that's a very it's a period of time that certainly the early stages of Operation Banner is certainly very interesting to me, and I've tried to talk about it somewhat on the channel. Obviously, it's a slightly controversial topic, unfortunately, but nevertheless talk about it anyway because it's interesting history, so it shouldn't be forgotten, or it shouldn't be you shouldn't be any fear of talking about it because it's an interesting period of history. So, but no, interesting to hear that as well. One thing I was going to ask was, what was your, just from a timeline point of view, where did you end up in the army in terms of your rank? What rank did you come up with in the
I
end?
ended up as a WO2 Artificer Quartermaster Sergeant.
Right. Okay. Yes.
But I mean, this was the problem. The technical trades, the radar, the radio, control equipment, they got their promotion on their trade.
Yes, of course.
Had to pass the trade before you could get the promotion. Where the vehicle mechanics, it was knowing the trade, but also being regimental as well.
Yes.
And I mean, we had a terrible reputation, the Tels techs in particular, as being absolute waste as a military.
The military side of things, yes.
Exactly. I mean, and you could understand. I mean, they're when I went to Germany the first time. I'm 19 years old. I'm a substantive lance corporal. There's these 28-year-old vehicle mechanics who are still craftsmen who've forgotten more than I would ever know.
Yes.
Me on guard saying, "Oh, craftsman so do this."
This is the thing, as you say, when the rank is based upon the proficiency, then in, as you say, on qualification, shall we say, it can cause some friction. I'm not particularly au fait with where that occurred in the army and sort of what trades that occurred with, but I know it happened in the navy before everything became standardized, sort of thing. But yes, it's interesting. There is always friction where that's the case, where promotion is earned in different ways. It's there's always going to be friction.
And silly things that because we were really quite raw as soldiers, although we may have been in the army 4 years, 3 of those have been in boys service, so that didn't really count.
Yes.
And you learnt to be sensible very quickly.
Yes, indeed. Yes, a bit of pragmatism it doesn't go amiss, definitely. That's very interesting as well. I hadn't realised there was the difference within REME. That is interesting.
Yes, and it stopped actually when the term that I left the apprentice school is when it stopped, because what used to happen before, if a boy in the apprentice school became an RSM, a boy RSM, or a boy sergeant major, or a boy sergeant, he was promoted to lance corporal when he left the school, irrespective of what trade he was. So that was even worse, as you can imagine, a 19-year-old lance corporal vehicle mechanic coming out, first class, and he would go to the workshop and there's a first class vehicle mechanic.
Who's a craftsman, yes.
Who knew the vehicles inside out. For those guys, it's difficult.
Yeah, and woe betide anyone who did try and throw their weight around. Yeah,
as you could imagine,
Yes, definitely. Well, that is something I didn't know. So that's new for me. That is interesting. When you went to Germany, I presume you were supporting several different units. Then you were very much headquarters. Headquarters unit.
Yeah, what it was like in Dortmund. At that particular time, on one of the streets was about 6 barracks, one to the other, which are all ex Bundeswehr, a German army pre-war or built during the war. And so what we would do, we had our workshop in one of the barracks, and then sort of the next barracks along would be the artillery, the next barracks along would be the Army Service Corps, whoever, and they would just bring their equipment to us. And
as needed. Understood.
But we would also go to them to carry out inspections and stuff like that.
Yes. Interesting. Okay, so that makes good logic. That makes at least good logical sense. Which as I said, the British Army isn't always good at that. But
and also as well, like in Dortmund, there were numerous units, and some of the units would be supported by 5 infantry workshops.
Yes.
And other units may be supported by another infantry workshops, but that may be at Minden or Duisburg.
Yes.
But rather than take their equipment to Minden, it was arranged they would bring it to us.
Right. Again, that makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah. We looked after everybody within maybe a 50, 60-mile radius, and then the next workshop up the road would do the same.
That does make good sense. Absolutely. Yeah. So that's. Can you tell me a little bit more about your service in Oman, because we've sort of touched on that, but obviously you ended up, as you were saying, with the armoured regiment, although technically part of their signals unit.
Yeah. What happened? in Oman, they had a company called Airwork, which provided a lot of civilian support.
Mm.
And in the armoured regiment, we had 3 guys who worked for Airwork. So they were civilians. And there was nobody really military-wise to liaise between the two.
Right, okay.
And as I say, normally I had been with the LAD, with the Armoured Regiment LAD, but because they didn't have us, it had to be somebody from the signals. But because I had experience of workshops and armoured vehicles anyway, it suited me down to the ground.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
So once I was there, I then got a couple, I think I got 4 Omani radio technicians as well sent with me, and we started to operate like you would do in the REME,
Yes.
where do maintenance of the equipment, repairs that we could do in situ. We would do other repairs. We just sort of took the radio out if it was beyond us and took it to the signals in the main headquarters in Oman.
Right.
And they would do the repair. That was at 1 signal regiment.
So you sort of introduced a new system almost in that way of having that little that it may be limited ability, but that ability for the armoured unit itself to have an inbuilt section of men who could deal with this sort of situation. Yeah,
that's right. Because before they didn't have this. There was a guy who was there who I took over from, but he'd only been there a few months, and it'd been a bit up and down and iffy, which was going on, you know.
Yeah.
So, but when I got there, it became more formalised.
Yes.
And then after about a year, we were based initially at Seeb, which is near Muscat in the north of Oman,
yes,
where the capital is. But the ranges where the guys had their practice is, you're okay, I'll just push something.
Oh, right.
No, they had the ranges where they used to go to have the tank battles, and that was about 100 miles out in the desert. And so they decided it's a good idea to build the armoured regiment camp out that way.
Yes.
Away from the capital.
And rather than shifting tanks every time you want to go and have an exercise. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So we moved out there to the desert, and that was quite something different, you know.
Yes, absolutely. And do you say there was also some thought there was a threat from one of the neighbouring countries as well at the time, or a perceived threat?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that was when the guy the guy in the 2nd Signal Regiment in Salalah in the south.
Yes.
He was a New Zealand guy who decided that enough was enough and he was going to leave. And they didn't have anybody to replace him. So,
right.
You know, Mr. Soft is sat in the desert with nothing to do, send him down.
Yes.
So I went down to Salalah with the 2nd Signal Regiment. That's how I became involved with them. And yes, we had this trouble. I can't think what the year was now. It must have been beginning 87, end of 87, beginning of 88, where some of the Yemeni army came across the border.
Right. Yes.
And it was one of the frontier regiments. The guys were in a couple of vehicles and they were captured. Some were killed and some were captured. And so there's a bit of a flare up at the border.
Yes.
And you can imagine it was absolute chaos. But it's fortunately nobody else was injured or hurt. No, you know.
It calmed down without further loss of life. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a lot. You know, they said that the Yemeni colonel had a brainstorm and sent his men across.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But it was quite sad because the armoured regiment came down. They loaded the tanks onto the tank transporters, and we're talking about 800 miles almost driving down, and there's nothing in between bar desert.
Yes.
So the tanks there, and then they found they left the ammunition behind.
Oh, that's superb. You couldn't write it, could you? That's brilliant. Purely from my inner child, what sort of tanks were they?
They were chieftains.
They were chieftains. All right. Okay.
But they had, I think, 6 or 8 M40s, American tanks. or maybe 12. It may well have been 12. We certainly had, I think it was an M88 armored recovery
Yes, I know
vehicle,
what you mean. Yes, yeah.
along with the equivalent chieftain equivalent
Hmm.
to do maintenance on.
Interesting.
And the difference was, I remember in the going in the American armored recovery vehicle to do some maintenance. It was like a ballroom in there. You know, you had
Yes.
room to move about and stuff like that. With the chieftain, you were sort of
Yeah.
squeezed.
Squeezing through and reaching round things and everything
Yeah,
to get at stuff. Yeah.
it,
Yes.
in fact,
Very interesting.
I did lose a ratchet in there, and I never did find it.
No, I was going to say that's there's a chap on YouTube called the Chieftain who reviews tanks. He goes around all museums and looks at tanks, and there's two things, which is the turret monster and the hull monster, and they will eat your tools, whatever, anything you happen to drop, it's gone.
Yeah,
You know.
and for one of the problems for the salesperson in BATUS in particular, we had them there, was that the tank telephone is at the back of the tank, which goes into the center. And if that cable is crushed, to replace it, you have to take the pack out.
Oh, right. Okay. Good Lord.
And in BATUS, every winter they would overhaul the tanks completely. And our task was to make sure that the cable was working okay before they put the pack back in.
Oh, pack back in. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, sort of to go to the vehicle mechanics, you know, later and say, we just checked our radio system and the tank telephone is not working. Can you take the pack out? Was not a good thing to say.
No. On that subject, were there any particular memories of equipment that was particularly badly designed from a maintenance point of view? Were there any absolute nightmares you had to deal with in terms of vehicle mounted kit, or any other kit for that matter?
No, I think no. Most of the stuff was okay.
Yes.
It was. I can't. I remember in tanks I was always very dubious. I didn't like working in them with the engine running or the auxiliary generator running, because things could move very, very quickly.
Indeed, yes, that's true.
So what I would always do is make sure the auxiliary generator and the engine was off. So that if somebody did knock the button to turn the turret, it moves slow.
Absolutely, yes.
But vehicle-wise, no, I think they were all much of a muchness.
Much of a muchness, yes.
Yeah. We used to get the ferret each year at BATUS. We got 8 replacement ferrets, and for some reason they always had some weird harness in them which we had to take out.
Oh, right, okay.
And then we had to put another harness back in.
Right.
I can't remember what the difference was, but certainly when we would send in the autumn time, when 8 ferrets were being sent back to UK, we would take the harness out.
Yes.
And keep them in boxes. Then in the spring, when 8 new ones came, we would take that harness out, what was ever in it, and put the original
the other one back in.
It.
Yeah, so, there was some reason for it, but
for the life I remember.
No. Yeah. It's, as I say, that I can understand why your time at BATUS was so. From what I've heard of the training area and everything, and obviously maybe from a maintenance role, as you say, you've got that great opportunity for R&R afterwards as well. But it must have been a fascinating place to work as well.
It really was. Yeah, I mean, we worked 5 days a week, and Christmas Eve. If Christmas Eve was in the weekday, you work Christmas Eve. We work Christmas Eve for lunchtime, and then we had Christmas Day off if it was on the weekday, because there was so much work to do. Once the battle was left from October to March, you had to repair and refurbish everything.
Yes, ready for the next
armored cars, the whole lot, you know. And I normally would have a Tels Tech would stay behind or be posted there for the winter program to help out. And this poor soul would sit there with a cubic meter box full of headsets or microphones.
Oh, yes, right.
All day long, just go through them and repair them.
Yeah.
Because that's what was needed, you know. I mean, it was a soul-destroying job, but somebody had to do it.
Someone had to do it, absolutely. And a very small detail, but one I'm interested to get to the bottom of. The Canadian boots that you managed to acquire, were they issued, or did you acquire them via some other means?
No, what you had to do, if you had to find an old pair to start with.
Right.
And then there was one of the ladies who used to work in the ordnance, in the Canadian ordnance store. If you could give her an old pair, she could give you a new pair.
Ah, I see. Right. Yes. Yeah.
And as I say, they were much more comfortable than the British one. You can see with the lining inside.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. The Canadian combat boot, I have to say, is a far better design. Even when the British Army did introduce the high combat boot, which I've just done a video on, made a video on recently, the Canadian boots are far better than the eventual issued British combat boots. So yes, I can understand you wanting to get your hands on a pair of those, definitely.
Yeah, and as I say, I wore them all the time. Normally, you know, in the REME, the warrant officers would tend to wear shoes. But you know, I was just to be awkward. Oh well, it wasn't to be awkward, but I enjoyed wearing boots.
Yes,
so
yes.
Even in Scotland, when I was on the inspection team, I would wear boots.
Yes.
And barrack trousers, you know, it's just the footwear I would wear. That's why they got worn out like that.
Absolutely, yes. So you brought them back with you and continued wearing them right the way through?
Exactly, yeah.
Black pair of combat boots. Yeah, I would say they are a very good pair of boots. So I thankfully have bought a pair before the pair you sent me. So I do have a pair for use in recreations or whatever. Yeah. And also comparison, you know, from that point of view, I might compare them to the British.
Yeah.
But no, thank you for that little bit of information. I was just intrigued as to how you got your hands on them.
Yeah, apparently before, you know, if you asked the lady, she could give you a pair, but it got silly, you know, the number of pairs they counted for. So it's basically, whatever, if you could give her a pair of boots that looked like those, she could give you a pair.
Fresh pair, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Likewise, we wore the Canadian Army Parkers in the winter.
Oh yes.
Never wore the British one. The only time you wore your British Parker is if your Canadian one was being dry cleaned.
Right, got you. Yeah, because far superior garment.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Interesting. No, this has been absolutely fascinating, Jack. Thank you very much indeed
for
the chat. I probably will have more questions, so we might do a part 2 to this at some point if you'd be happy with that. Yeah. But thank you very much indeed for running through some of your army service and also talking. I mean, obviously the service in Oman and Saudi, which I didn't know about, is a bit different. So thank you very much for filling in some of the details of that as well. So there we are. Thank you very much again, Jack. I really enjoyed chatting to you, and it was very good to hear your experiences. It's always interesting to hear individuals' particular favourite experiences in the services, little tidbits of information like the issuing of Canadian boots and so forth. So from my point of view, it was very interesting. Hopefully it has been for everyone who's watched this as well. If you have found this interesting and you'd like to see more of this sort of thing, I am planning to try and conduct more of these interviews going forward. If you'd like to see those, please do consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, the little notification button down below, and that will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my uploads and you would like to support the channel, you can. Patreon and PayPal are both linked down below, and a massive thank you as ever to all of my patrons and those who support me through PayPal. It really is very much appreciated. Thank you all very much indeed. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media, you can. Facebook, Instagram and Twitter are all linked down below as well. If you'd like to get in contact but you don't really use social media, there is of course an email address down there as well. That's everything for this video, so until next time, bye for now.